Aaron Katersky live via Kiev, Ukraine. Good morning, Aaron Katersky.
Good morning, McGraw. The sort of human drama of what's playing out with the remains of Flight 17 victims, that's all coming up against a geopolitical crisis between Russia and Ukraine, with separatist forces in the middle, and more battles and shelling today right around the crash site that investigators are looking at for the first time this morning.
Yeah, talk about, I've heard you this morning, talk about these smuggled surface-to-air missiles that are being smuggled in and out of areas. What's going on there?
Well, this is part of the case that the United States has made and leveled against the Russians and the separatists, and it's essentially how we know what exactly went on. The United States tells ABC News that up to 3 surface-to-air missile systems, like the one used to shoot down Flight 17, were smuggled into eastern Ukraine from Russia over the last week. All 3 were then spirited back into Russia after shooting down the plane. The systems just exited Ukraine, headed back to Russia after the shoot-down. What the U.S. doesn't know is specifically who pulled the trigger. Was it the separatists or the Russians? The Ukrainian prime minister told us today that, in his words, his colorful words, a group of drunken guerrillas couldn't operate this system on their own. So he believes that the Russians provided the training and the necessary know-how, the companion radar systems, and the U.S. also has evidence that some of the separatists have been trained inside Russia.
I heard this weekend. I don't know how true it is, which is why you're here. Some of the bodies were found without clothes on. Is that possible?
Well, it's really tough to confirm some of those reports. And you know, the bodies were in. I don't want to get too graphic on you, but the state of the bodies, some of them were intact and some of them were not.
Sure.
And only fragments have been recovered. So and for several days they languished out in the field in the July heat. Now most have been collected, zipped into bags. For a time they were left by the side of the road where anybody could pick through them. But then they've been loaded onto train cars, and they're on these refrigerated box cars. And that's where they're sort of languishing for the moment. The Ukrainians say they want that train to move toward Kiev and ultimately on to Amsterdam for the forensic processing. But the rebels who control the train station say they're not willing to yet let them go.
Aaron, I've heard a lot on this. I haven't heard anybody say or ask the question, so I'm going to ask you. What are the possibilities of this being an accident? Meaning they thought this was some type of military plane, they thought it was a plane carrying bombs or something else, so they shot it down, and it was a mistake that they went after a civilian airliner.
Oh, I think that's probably pretty likely. It's really hard to imagine that these separatists would target civilian aircraft, especially a Malaysia Airlines flight where there were no Ukrainians on board and no one connected to their struggle with Ukraine for the last several months. It's really difficult to imagine that they would target a commercial plane. Perhaps some have suggested that they didn't have quite the knowledge of the surface-to-air missile system that they needed to do proper targeting. Others have suggested they mistook it for a military plane, although how you'd mistake one for the other is tough to know. But they had been targeting military aircraft over the past couple of weeks, and several had been shot down.
Yeah. What do we know about the black box?
Well, again, we think it's in rebel hands, and the separatist leader told ABC News that he thinks his men have it, although they can't be certain because they're not experts. And they've also there's some thought that it's been transferred to Moscow. Now, the Ukrainian government intercepted phone conversations, 2 rebels talking about the black boxes and talking about how Moscow wants them. But whether where they are and who's in control of them, and whether international aviation investigators are ever going to get them, is all kind of an open question right now.
What about the fighting? And we have heard there's a ceasefire. We also have heard that the fighting's continuing. What's going on there?
There was heavy shelling in and around Donetsk, which is right where this crash scene is, and we were told that the Ukrainian military was trying to take back some of the battle space that it had lost to the separatists, and they picked a heck of a time to do it, with the eyes of the world on this crash site. So the president of Ukraine had ordered his forces to halt but it did add another dimension to trying to get a train full of bodies moving through the war zone.
Aaron, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Is Vladimir Putin saying much? Have you heard much from him?
He issued a statement overnight that didn't go as far as many world leaders were hoping. He's received a number of phone calls from world leaders urging him to do more, to use his influence with the rebels, to get them to guarantee safety and security for the investigators, and to get the bodies moving. The question is he going to do it? Now, he issued a statement blaming the Ukrainian military for continuing their fight. He said, well, it wouldn't have been shot down if there hadn't been this fight by the Ukrainian military. And he said there should be negotiations about the bodies and about the safety of investigators, but he made no demand that the separatists relent. And that's what some world leaders were hoping for, and why there's talk now of additional sanctions from Europe and the United States.
Aaron Katersky live in Kiev, Ukraine. Aaron, be safe. Thanks for checking in.
Thanks, McGraw.
626 here, Big 550, KT.